Hello, welcome to my Sunday Night Mysteries. This is ArtsyWisdom. My name is Diane. Thank you for coming by. Today I am going to do two uh, unsolved crimes. Martha Moxley, who was found dead October 30th, 1975. They had somebody arrested and convicted of her killing, but I think the person that asked wanted to make sure that's what was happened. And Otto Warmbier, the young man who um, was falsely accused and went to North Korea, and then he barely was alive coming back home in 2017. And I looked into him and his soul and what information he had for me. I also asked Napoleon about what's going on, and I got some really interesting images from him, completely different. And Count Saint Germain, I wanted to always look into him and maybe a connection to Metatron, but I'll tell you what that is. So very interesting. Originally, I was going to look at Richard Nixon as well on one of my many lists here, but I ran out of time and I need to get this done so it'll be posted on Sunday. So thank you for coming by. Thank you for all my likes and comments. I know many of you enjoy this and I appreciate it. And let's get started. Oh, so I'm going to look into poor Martha Moxley. She was born August 16th, 1960, and she died October 30th, 1975. She was only 15, and she was beaten and stabbed to death with a golf club in the yard of her family's suburban Greenwich home in October, well, I told you October 30th. She was last seen hanging out with friends on a mischief night. Now, what I did was I meditated on her first, and then I looked into what had happened. I guess they've done documentaries and different shows, and people have looked into her death. The person who was arrested is actually his aunt is Ethel Kennedy, a Michael Skakel. Anyway, I'm just going to read this real quick. And she was last seen alive, spending some time. That's what I told you. Michael Skakel was at 15 also at the time, and he was convicted in 2002. So it took a long time for them to arrest him and convict him. And he was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. In 2013, he was granted a new trial. They ruled that his counsel had been inadequate, and he was released on $1.2 million bail in 2016. And in 2016, and in 2016, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled 4-3 to reinstate his conviction. The Connecticut reversed it in 2018. Get your act in order, Connecticut, and they ordered a new trial. On October 30th, 2020, the anniversary of her death, the state of Connecticut announced it would not retry Skakel for Moxley's murder. So that was the end of that. So I wanted to look to see who I got with her. And what I saw was she was excited to talk. Some people are just not excited to talk. Agatha Christie is one of them. She does not want to, you'd think somebody like her would want to talk, but she wasn't eager. And, oh yeah, it's RFK Jr.'s cousin, that guy. Just saying. I do a lot of political readings on this channel, so if you haven't been there for that. She's excited to talk. She says so much noise about her death. She's saying there's so much chatter about it. She said, we were friends, and she said, and cousins. I don't think that's true here because I think they lived across the street from each other. She said, I walked over, ran around, and I saw her. There was kids somewhere else in a house, or there was groups around. But there was two other people. It wasn't just one. There was two young men or teenagers. And I felt like she was experimenting with sex stuff. And that's what she says. We were experimenting with sex stuff. I thought would play with each other a lot. Each other like, you know, like you do when you're younger like that, I guess. But I said, like, there's two people beside her. And I think they're both men or boys. And they wanted to hide from others. They didn't want anybody to see us. So I remember I said, there's those people. They wanted to be in this location where it was, hidden between trees or something. somebody, okay, so this might trigger somebody, and I apologize, but this is what I saw. Um, there was something with her pants being down. It wasn't like she wasn't SA'd, but there was something like he, whoever, and I wrote Thomas, but Thomas was the brother. It wasn't Michael. So those two could have been there maybe. And I also felt whoever was there was high, wasted, and I felt like acid. Not that I'm an acid taker, but I felt that feeling. And then I felt paranoid. I felt like whoever this was became super paranoid. And I'm sure it was a reaction. It was like a reaction. And I felt like the acid did that. And I don't know, maybe it was a bad batch of weed. I don't know, but you wouldn't get like violent usually with that. And I felt paranoid. Bad behavior was typical. And I feel like maybe they wanted to play around and masturbate together or something weird like that. You know, he got paranoid because he would get in trouble. There's something about in the middle of it or during situation, he realized like he was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get in trouble. And he would get in trouble, and she said she would tell. So I don't know if they went too far. He forced her to do something she didn't want to, and then he, you know, and she's saying thank you, and he did do it, the one that Michael Skakel. And then there's somebody else that knows something, which I'm sure somebody knows something. Afterwards, I read there was a tutor that lived across the street that they questioned, and she wrote that I wrote, he might know something. That tutor might know something as well. Not necessarily did anything, but might know something. She says, I'm great now. I missed my life. She said it was a soul path. So when we have our soul contract, a lot of times situations arise in our life. Our karmic patterns repeated, behaviors that we need to release, or relationships that we need to revisit and relive to let that go. Sometimes that happens, but we don't know the way in which it will go. You might be you might be set up in this family that has issues, and maybe whatever that is, your karmic pattern is related to that, and you experience that. She says, I had free will. She said, I was given many paths in my free will in that life. And I know she was a wealthy girl. I think that whole neighborhood was very well off. Not that that matters, but I'm reminded to tell you that. But she had choices, and she's showing me like paths, like 4 or 5 different paths, and she chose this one. So the soul contract was learning, but not necessarily going like that. Um, she said, I missed my life. It was possible free will. She said, I'm happy. But she hasn't come back down. And that was like 50 years ago. She said, I talk to my family members all the time. I watch out for them. So many have troubles. I don't know who that is. She said, I will help them and come back when I'm done. So there's somebody within her family. I don't know if it's siblings or whoever. Um, but she's not, she's around them and she's helping them. But she's okay. But she was, I guess, hit in the head. It was a fracture and then stabbed with the golf club, broken pieces. So that's, to me, um, personal. And I feel like that when he was a kid, because he was 15 too at the time, is something about paranoia, something about triggered, feared all of a sudden he was going to get in trouble for that. Um, yeah. And I think that was it. So they did pick, I think they got the wrong guy, but there was somebody else there. And I don't know if they were initially there and then they left. And then I don't think this other person saw everything. I think they were there and left. So there was something happening, and maybe that third person doesn't want to talk anymore because it's his sibling. And and I guess the guy who was arrested and convicted said, "Oh, nobody's going to take me to jail because I'm a Kennedy." So he had said that. So he had supposedly had confessed later to somebody, but He did do it, I think. I think that was him. So whoever had asked about Martha, poor thing. But she's happy. She's moved on and she's with her family in the best possible way. Well, I don't know. I guess live would be the best possible way. But anyway, okay. And now the sad story of Otto. I'm going to screw up his name. Otto Warmbier, I think. He intended to spend 5 days sightseeing in North Korea in 2016. Instead, he spent 17 months there in detention, where his family believes he was tortured into a vegetative state. Less than a week after returning to the United States with severe brain damage, his family announced he had completed his journey home. He was only 22, and he died with his family near his side. He wouldn't open his eyes, he wouldn't speak, he couldn't do any of that when they received him back. They had to file to get him back, and they said that North Koreans say that he stole a poster in a hotel room or hotel floor he wasn't supposed to be on. And Otto's fate deepens and John McCain, which is great. He talked about this. He said, "Let us state the facts plainly. Otto Warmbier, an American citizen, was murdered by the Kim Jong-un regime." And even then, because this was in 2017, Trump condemned the brutal regime and lamented the loss of the young man in the prime of his life. Now, there's a picture of him here, and I'll put it in this video. The minute I saw his face, I had a sense of sadness. There's something, I don't want to say different, but there's a very tender sensitivity within this kid. And I just saw that in his eyes. I don't know. He almost looked like he just had finished crying when I looked at this picture. He went with this group, the travel group, Pioneer Tours travel group, and it was supposed to be a brief stay and then on to Beijing. And yeah, he cried. I guess they had a little trial, fake trial, and he cried and he asked to be released, and they never would release him. He admitted and he signed all this stuff, but poor guy. And just real quick, this is a political statement, so if you don't want a political statement, he was kept against his will without, well, it was a fake trial, and they wouldn't bring him home. They wouldn't let him come back for a year and a half or 17 months, whatever it was. And now there's a man, his name is Mahir Tarabishi. He's in a Texas ICE facility. He was the sole caretaker of his disabled son. And on the 23rd of January, without his father's, I mean, the family tried to care for this young man. He was some very specific condition where the father knew how to do it. He cared for him for the last 20 years. And I guess he overstayed his visa and he didn't go back and renew it. And so, but they would not let him come back for his son's funeral. The son died January 23rd of this year. And they said no. They repeatedly asked the ICE just for an afternoon, just please as we lay him to rest, please let him out just to say goodbye to his son. No. I'm just doing Otto's, and I'm thinking the inhumane and cruel nature of that. Maybe they didn't beat the dad to death, but the inhumanity and the cruelty and the indignity of that is horrific. Anyway, I saw that connection and I was like, how are they different? I mean, it's terrible. Okay, back to Otto. He's so free now. He's very free. I feel like he's out of his body and he's just, when he did come back, he was still in a state of fear, and like he knew what had happened to him, but he also eventually he understood where he was at the end. So he became more at ease and he felt like he was home, and then he was able to let go. From a bird's eye view, I'm looking at him, and he's like a light angelic being, almost transparent. I don't see him as a human or I mean, he was, but I just see him from above, like just like a beautiful light-filled angelic being. He had several, and then I went into what happened. He had several things: tortured, beatings. He was unable to cope. And I told you that picture of him, had a personality where, like I said, he was very tender. And the way that they did that to him and beat him, I think the brain damage comes from being hit in the head or head knocked on the ground, or and he was left cold and hungry a lot, kicked, etc. And I felt like he had a psychotic break besides being almost beaten to death. I feel like he also had a psychotic break to stay out of his body in a way, so he would be removed from the situation here and there. Yeah. And yeah, his brain bashed against the sides. That's why he had the brain damage. I asked him, I said, he said, I regret nothing because I brought my family together by my actions. And I was like, well, that's not a good thing. You had a very bad thing happen to you. He said, I had a soul contract to somehow create situations of collective grief. So the United States, his family, everybody, he actually completed that collective grief. We experienced his sad ending. He said, I knew it was bad. And he reminded me like a crucifixion. Not that he's Jesus, but it was almost like I knew it was going to be bad. And that's why I was very intensely emotional going in. And he had a sensitivity. Like I said, the world of inhumanity is normal for them. Oh, they shouldn't be on Earth. I'm sorry. Can't read my own writing. The world of inhumanity is normal for them. And a window, that particular period of time, he showed me it was a window that they wanted to prove a point, the North Koreans or Kim Jong-un, by showing dominance or power over Otto. And basically he was the scapegoat or a sacrificial lamb. That's what I saw too. But it was a very specific window, and he happened to be there to fit their need. Show power and dominance. They wanted to show Americans that they were tough, and they wanted to make them not want to come, of course, to prove a point. And they also, then I saw him, made him sick with no food. So he was very malnourished, and something about poison. I don't know if they shot him up with poison or something with poison that slowly built up in his system as well. Horrible, horrible. Then when I told you about that picture that I showed, his face seemed sad. He had a victim type energy to attract powerful beasts, cruelty and brutality. And I'm not saying it needed to happen, but some people are, like I said, sensitive and open, and they're just kind. And for him, whatever the reason was, he attracted the that period of time for them to make him the sacrificial lamb. And then what I got, which is terrible again, like when straight guys, they can't stand gay men. I'm sorry if some of you are that way, but they didn't able to back, maybe it still happens now, obviously, but in some of these countries, but straight men used to beat up gays and sometimes kill them, right? And that's the same feeling I have, is like, you are weaker. You need to, I mean, that's, weaker. You need to be gone. And we need to show that we're more powerful. It's that same feeling. And that sounds terrible. The lesson, he says, what's our lesson in this? He said, maintain democracy and humane conditions. That is the only thing separating us from animals. Educate everyone on history and how easy it is to slide rights away, meaning rights can just fall away. How easy it is if you just one by one. He said, don't be sad. I am with God, quote unquote. Move forward. Do your best to bring the light to earth. So much darkness we can't even see. There's so much darkness. But he said the light is 10 times more powerful. So that was beautiful. So if we continue, and that's the same, something with Saint Germain too, is similar message. So living in that place of light, even though this experience is horrible for him and his family, and just thinking about it, it keeps this dark feelings, dark emotions moving through us. He's like, please know that I'm fine. And what we can do now is expand the light all around us to get the darkness out of the corners and the place that it's hidden. Stay in the light and believe these days will pass, months and years maybe, yet learning is painful. He says, grow decency, humanity, and kindness. Do not let them take it from you. They can't. They can't take that away from you. Decency, kindness, and humanity and dignity. They can't. So you can have that no matter what happens. And we need to, his message is we need to just maintain that, grow it, in the 3D world. And I'll get to Saint Germain. I'll tell you what he says to him. So, okay, that's it. But I wished him well. I saw he did this when he went by, like, give me, air kisses. I was like, okay, which was kind of funny. But he's happy. He's moved on. So that was good. And he, I think part of the reason he was so sensitive is because he was closer to the realms, and that was what that angelic light was about. All right, let's talk to Napoleon. I didn't know what to expect. I'm never like big history buff with him or anybody really, but he is jumping for joy. I felt like, oh yeah, just side note, his birthday is August 15th, and Martha Moxley's was August 16th. Both Leos. I find that very interesting. These coinkydinks, I don't know what Otto's birthday is. Well, he's a fire sign. He is a fire sign, but Sagittarius, December 12th, 1994. So hence the traveling. Sagittarius like to have adventure and travel. So there you go. That was part of his deal. All right, Napoleon. He says, I'm so happy to chime in. I don't know why you used the word chime, because pretty sure they didn't use the word then in with this. He said, this is like my time where the peasants had no wisdom. He's talking about this. I'm in the energy of the struggles that we're having now with ICE and immigration enforcement and the violence. He said, where the peasants had no wisdom about what was important, meaning I knew it was better. He's kind of egotistical. This just FYI. He's like, I knew it was better. And they fought, he said, and I said, a mistake? He said, of course, now I know, meaning asking him, did he make a mistake then? He says, of course, now I know, but my ego self could not see past my desires, meaning when he was actually Napoleon. Because I'm kind of talking through his soul and his human self as Napoleon and his soul self. He said, I was amazing. He's very cocky and could win all my battles. And I was king and emperor, he says. He was just so proud of himself. And I said, well, we have this guy in power here in the United States. I said, how are you different than Trump or other people, other leaders? And he said, yes. He's talking about Trump. Yes. I'm different, he said, because he does not raise a sword. He sits and whines. And he said he is a weak man. His strength is limited to lies and people or his aides he sends. Yet their egos and goals, meaning those helpers, will obfuscate his goals per their own, meaning their goals are going to get clouded up with what he thinks. And so this whole situation isn't a good leader, does not make a good leader, a good focused, goal-orientated leader. And those people are taking advantage of him. That's the other thing. That's the other flip side about that. He is no tyrant, but a weak ruler, which I had a hard time listening. Tyrant, I kind of think he's a tyrant. Maybe he means something different. Has no strength of will. And I was like, yeah, he does. But then he says, his will is burdened by his greed. So the strength is, again, being chewed away by his greed, or his will, I'm sorry. The greed takes over. His will is tempered by his faculties expiring. So there you go. His will is tempered by his faculties expiring. So his brain is going and he can only go so far, is what he's telling me. So what about the protesters? He said, they are better than some forces. They have will and strategy to win. Just the strength of government dominates them. Their hearts have so much strength and will not surrender. He showed me how much like the ice agents are like domination, brutality, just like straightforward dark arrows. They are more from within in this boundless energy of knowing that they're right, and it's expansive and big. Their hearts have so much. Unfortunately, that is bad for their bodies and their health, meaning they can only fight so much. Valiant effort, though, he said, I commend them, protesters. He said, as I see it, they cannot, quote unquote, win if the prize is to force the government surrender. He's like, won't be able to force the government to surrender. And then he showed me how they can fight this. And he showed me everybody hiding behind buildings and angles and sneaking around, strategies like you would in a war or something, because he said they're not playing fair or fighting fair. He says, so you don't have to fight fair. Because back in the day, I don't know if this was his thing where they, fought in lines and they just met each other and all hell broke loose. But he's saying that there's so many more things that the protesters can do, because of their lack of, physical strength or guns and everything, and or inability to use them, and they have to like do it like strategy wise, look from different angles, look down the streets, come from behind, guerrilla type stuff, sneak attacks. He said they don't fight fair. We should not either. He said these villagers are like those who fought in war for independence, meaning back in the 1700s. Very honorable for the greater good and self-governing. So he was commending him for that. So I think he came a little bit later than the Revolutionary War. He was busy with his own French stuff. But he compared these villagers, or these protesters, as people similar to that, fighting for the greater good and governance. And then I saw Josephine's face, and I've had this sense from his perspective. He really loved her, and he's looking at her face, and she was so like milky skin, so very fair, but her eyes were dark, her hair was dark, beautiful features, just delicate, but the hair was dark. I mean, it was really striking how different the light and the dark. So pretty. I felt like she was really pretty. Loved her, and he was impressed by her. So I don't know if she was a really smart lady or just pretty, but I have a feeling that he could talk to her about things. I could be wrong, but I feel like that was it. I asked him what did he learn on a soul level while he was here. He said to be amply satisfied in all things. Live fully, period. My actions and leadership depended on it. So being a very big leader, strategist, emperor, whatever it is, he's like, what did I say? To be amply satisfied in all things. So doing everything excessively, maybe. He said, my strength changed the world. You must be the greatest you can be. I have no regrets. Again, he has no regrets either. From that life. And I asked him, still none. That was my soul contract. I had been many leaders, generals, etc., but Napoleon was my highest execution of my karma. I saw him as so many military people, so many leaders all over time. Like this was just one of many, but nobody was as high as that one, as Napoleon. They were all, just majors, captains, soldiers, whatever they were. And I asked him what his soul learned. He says, I could have been someone small and inconsequential, but I needed to see what total expansion felt like. Some darkness was seen, and I'm still releasing now. And, well, I'm going to read this to you. And I said, now, he said, I have been many lives in the military, like I just said, all less than the top one or the leader, the highest one. He said, these men, quote unquote, had to feel punished and small for their actions. the ones that he was. So he had a ton of karma. Maybe it was what he did in all those wars that he led. Um, and I know he did, after I did this, I read something about education and trying to maintain a better government. But I think he hurt a lot of people. And so his karmic is vast. His karmic burden, or his karmic debt is vast. He said, I need to make amends. I've repeated mistakes and patterns and have not learned quickly. Meaning he keeps repeating and repeating some of the same mistakes over and over in different ways, shapes, and situations, and doesn't always get the message. Because that Napoleon, he was pretty strong and he did a lot of damage, even as a woman once. He showed me he was a woman once. He said, I could not release my power and control to be a part. Not, oh, he wasn't a leader. He just couldn't, she was a controlling person. And I asked who, if he's here now, but he gave me this woman, this MAGA woman, and I think it's just a symbol of like the person he was, where he believed, or she believed, about certain things. She wanted to control him and she wanted to tell you what to do. She was just a person who lived their life. She wasn't anybody in particular. But she still came in with that Napoleon dominance, and she wanted to take over and control. And he's like, I had to learn through her that I can't. But I feel like that's not that long ago, or it still might be active, I think. But he's really resistant to learning, really resistant. Some people learn right away and they have so many lives wrapped in one where they process a lot of things. Not so much him. I said, we need help. Help us. What do you have advice? He said, keep fighting and plan to change these leaders when you can, meaning remove them. He said, we must not take wise leadership for granted. And rumors are not always true. And that means, propaganda and the lies they spew on TV or through right-wing media. He says, face fears and know all changes over and over. Oh, no, all changes. Everything changes over and over and over. We're living in this little blip of a timeline, but nothing ever stays the same. But we're feeling it deeply right now. He said, guide it in the true, quote unquote, direction, meaning I think he meant right or good, direction. Expose, show hidden crimes and actions. It all works and grows the understanding to the world, meaning all the pieces eventually come together and they coalesce, and you can't deny it anymore. So expose, and that's like videos and taking pictures and getting online and talking about it and working together to expose it all. Divine wisdom, he says, not me, not there yet. Pray for guidance and faith. He said, don't follow me. I have work to do. I don't think he has he's not a divine guide, but he sure is still in his karmic debt situation. And it's been a few 250 years at least, I think, right? Or maybe, yeah. So he's working on it, but it doesn't seem to have gone away too readily. But he's still giving it his best shot. So that's really, really good. Yeah. So the Count of Saint Germain. And the Saint Germain is just an area where he was born. And he comes from a very aristocratic family. And I channeled him and spoke to him like I did the others, but completely different. I'm just going to read a little bit about this. They don't know exactly when he was born. He died in February of 1784. He was a European adventurer who had interests and achievements in science, alchemy, philosophy, and the arts. He rose to prominence in the European high society in the mid-18th century due to his works and interests. He associated himself with some of the top contemporary figures, including Casanova, Voltaire, and Mozart. And then I looked at his legacy, which is interesting. In various theosophical and post-theosophical teachings, the Count of Saint Germain is seen as a supernatural being called a master of the ancient wisdom, or an ascended master, who is responsible for ushering in the age of Aquarius. Several of these sects refer to him as Master Ricosi or Master R. Some write that the name Saint Germain invented for himself was a French version of the Latin Sanctus Germanus, meaning holy brother. He is associated with the color violet and the gemstone amethyst and the Maltese cross rendered in violet, usually the iron cross style cross. He's also recorded as the Kohan of the seventh ray. There's some future Theosophical Society and seven rays, but I'm not going to get into the depth of this because it's a lot. But I had always heard that he was Metatron. I don't know where I heard that or why, but I always heard that. Now, but what I'll tell you is what he told me. So this is Doreen Virtue. You know, she doesn't make these cards anymore. This is Ascended Masters, and I don't think he was this pretty. He looks a little bit like Vincent van Gogh. But his Saint Germain isn't a Catholic saint, but a count. He was known as the Wonder Man of Europe during his lifetime in the early 1700s. He was renowned for his magical abilities to give gems in the fountain of youth like elixirs to his many friends. He was a virtuoso magician. Oh, maybe he was a magician and musician and linguist who is beloved by royalty and blue-collar workers alike. Saint Germain helps light workers who wish to work toward world peace and bring about integrity and honesty in governmental and other system. Isn't that the best thing right now? So I'm happy. So this card is Work Your Magic. That's his card. I don't use those very much. I have a ton of cards, and hers, that particular one, I remember that face. So I asked him, okay. He says, first thing he says is, oh no. I said, are you real? He said, yes, of course. I travel through all the dimensions, inhabit people and influence situations. I am infinite. Saint Germain is one name that I have been. I flow in and around the earth. He was a temporary stop, meaning Saint Germain, Count of Saint Germain, was a temporary stop for which I needed to enlighten many in that time. He was also very intelligent, the actual guy, and it was not all me who spoke languages, music, etc. I was influencing those in power, meaning the man that Count of Saint Germain had his own abilities and gifts. He was born into that family and apparently had those gifts. But Saint Germain is saying that it's kind of like when you have an entity attached to you, but this is different. This is more of an absorption or a flow of energy of light, and it's more beneficial. It's a beautiful way that he inhabited this man to do some things at that time. And I asked him about Metatron because I wanted to know. He said, I am connected to Metatron, the ancient master, but we are separate beings. We do work together at times to save, assist, push, guide, lift, warn humans. But I felt like they were separate. Metatron is very much invested in the Judaic history. And just a side note, I used to talk to Moses. I still do. But there is, in some of my visions with him, there's a scribe. And this scribe has showed me a square grid, and each grid was either numbers or letters, or Hebrew letters or something, but they were all very, very important. They were all like the basis of things, and I couldn't quite make them out. But there were numbers and letters. It was kind of confusing. But in this book, okay, if you guys are interested, hopefully you won't be too. Metatron says, oh, they say that. I'll just read a little bit. He's the greatest of angels. He carries Jewish prayers through 900 heavens to God. He's originally ascribed to the angel Jehoel. Metatron stands at the top of the tree of life as the angel of the Lord. He is also identified with the tree of knowledge of good and bad. He embodies both human and angelic perfection. This enables him to be an excellent interface between the two realms, which like I just said with Saint Germain, they travel in and out. But his success depends on the righteousness of humans. So we better be good people. The good deeds of people generate a spiritual energy that literally visualizes Metatron, and without it, it grows weak and less effective. I know when people say raising your vibration lifts people up, and I think that's the feeling I got. He supposedly was a representative of God who led the tribes of Israel through the wilderness, and probably he is a dark angel who wrestled with Jacob. I'm not going to read all of this. This is my encyclopedias of angels. His name is the equivalent of Shaddai, one of the names of God. This association is derived from the mystical numerology called gematria, which assigns a numerical value to each letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Names and words that have the same numerical value have a mystical connection. So I know this may mean nothing to you, but for me, that's validation of what I saw back. Both Shaddai and Metatron equal 314. As another aspect of God, Metatron is something called the shining light of Shekinah, whose name is like that of his master. There's also the human of him was Enoch, I think. Yeah, he was so righteous that God transformed him directly into an angel, turning his flesh into flames, and yada yada. As Enoch had been a scribe, so Metatron continues on as a heavenly scribe, residing in the seventh heaven and logging all celestial and earthly events. He's like the naughty and nice list. I mean, I'm kidding. Yeah, he's the high priest of the heavenly temple, minister of wisdom, holds the secret to all divine affairs, minister of the guardian angels of 70 peoples of the world. In addition, he teaches those prematurely dead children who arrive in paradise. Oh, I find that super interesting and, like I said, validating. But Metatron is not Saint Germain. I just had to throw that in. Back to Saint Germain. He said, "We are the light, or God to you," he says, "but are not God. We take human communications to give knowledge. We take human communications to give knowledge." Oh, he take on human form and they communicate to give knowledge through the humans. But mystics have held this as, and is complex, meaning the mystics kind of know this, meaning this, like this book, but it's very complex and hard to understand for, people. Because I read about the Fountain of Youth and he did alchemy and something. He says, well, if you see, in a habit, oh my God. Well, if you see, I inhabit a human and am light and am not a heavy, unwise person. Okay, so he's a light-filled being. He's inhabiting the Saint Germain. I know how to transform from 3D to all dimensions. So what I saw was that the human being is very heavy. We're grounded on Earth and there's gravity. But what he's showing me is because he's lighter and he's just energy flowing and kind of inhabiting this Count Saint Germain, he knows how to transform from the 3D to all dimension. He says, so living, quote unquote, is meaningless, meaning the Fountain of Youth is just what we say it is, but it's something we came up with as humans to make us, more immortal or whatever. He said, so living is meaningless. He said, Saint Germain, his mind knew of things, yet the alchemy came from the spirit, not chemicals, meaning Saint Germain didn't make the alchemy, but his being did, or that person, this being that inhabited. He said, everything has energy and weight. This can be manipulated. So it's like a body, it's things, shape-shifting, I guess is how you might see that. He says miraculous, quote unquote, you might say. Instantaneously changing form. He said, Count Saint Germain's soul allowed me to enter and live. It was a point in time, a portal of ease. So that was like just an opening. And he flowed down into that moment of time and to be with Saint Germain and use that life to communicate to other humans. And I said, help us. He said, it is coming very soon. And then I said, months, years, weeks. He said, years. Times are moving to be more humane and equal for all. There has always been inequalities. It shows, and then he showed me a vast valley with flowers and a meadow. And it was really pretty. I don't know why. He says, we can all transform and make miracles, which I know to be true as well. You live in that state of the miraculous, and it can change in an instant. That's what I say, not what he's saying. But we can only see what's in front of us. So sometimes we lose the ability to accept the miraculous as happening. He said, open heart to the light, God, instantly things can change.